We're combining all the best old school wisdom with all the top new school methods to bring you the optimal way to coach and play the great game of baseball. This is the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass with Coach Bo.
Welcome to 80-20 Baseball. This is Coach Bo, episode 96. Man, we're closing in on episode 100. I get a lot of good feedback from a lot of you coaches that are listening and sharing that you like that once a week, putting out an episode every Tuesday that fits really well into your week. It gives you enough information to go out each week and implement. And you guys come here for a clear plan, a plan that makes your team fun to be on, one in which players all want to come back and play for next year, while simultaneously maximizing how many runs your team scores and minimizes the number of runs your team allows. It's a win-win-win plan here for youth coaches. 80-20 Baseball, the podcast, the website is focused on being a hub of knowledge. While I might be just one person myself, or the interviews, the people that we brought on these last 5 weeks have been awesome with Coach Murray and Coach Murphy. We might just be a few people, but really what we're trying to do here is first go out and find and then tightly filter as much information as we can out there in the baseball community. And trust me, there is a lot of information that we filter, and we're trying to really tightly filter it and then bring it to you. We're trying to curate the information here for all of you on a weekly 30-minute-ish show along with the website 80-20 Baseball. We're trying to bring you that information, the strategies that cover the big needle movers first and foremost, the 20% of things that will yield you and your team 80% of the results that you're trying to get out there on the field and within your team culture. The 20% of coaching actions that will net you 80% of your success, of your team success, while also topping it off with just enough of the smaller coaching items to make it a full package, a full plan. We are here to serve the baseball community, the youth baseball community specifically, although we do get advanced, and I'm not afraid to throw out advanced stuff to you youth coaches because I know you can handle it. It's just a matter of how much stuff we're putting out there, because youth baseball does not have 6 days a week, 7 days a week, 5 days a week like high school, college, and professional baseball. And you all are extremely smart. You're just as smart as any of those coaches that are coaching professional and coaching college and high-level varsity baseball at the high school level. You're just as smart, but it's not your day job. It's not something that you're immersed in 24/7 or at least year-round. It's something that you do to help out your kids, to help out the youth in your area. It's something that you do on top of your other day job that you're really good at, I'm sure. So 5 weeks of great interviews, good stuff. If you didn't listen to those interviews, go back, listen to those interviews. A lot of good wisdom was shared. Speaking of last couple weeks, so last week I shared out Gary Sheffield. Gary Sheffield, a lot of you know who Gary Sheffield was or is. Gatorade National High School Player in 1986, senior year high school baseball stats. If you missed it last week, 500 batting average, 15 home runs, 0 strikeouts. And so hitting home runs doesn't automatically mean high strikeouts. So, and I know that's anecdotal, but this holds true across a lot with a large sample size. Trust me, hitting for power, hit hard line drives, hard low fly balls, line drive fly balls, driving the ball into the outfield, not pop-ups, not fly balls, of course, but driving the ball, even hard line drives through the infield that at worst case become nice hard one-hoppers through the infield. You don't necessarily, or you're not going to necessarily get more strikeouts because that's your hitting approach. It's just not true. It's a narrative that's out there. The problem is with strikeouts, or the reason that hitters strike out when we hit on this last week, so I'm just touching on it just again to review because I think it's such a big deal and such a big needle mover and so helpful for all you coaches that are listening to this. You're going to have such a competitive advantage because you're not going to be teaching kids to go up there and be protective with their swings. You're going to teach your players to go and swing at pitches that are in their hitting zone with less than 2 strikes and not swing at pitches outside of their hitting zone, and definitely not outside of the strike zone, definitely not pitches into dirt and things like that. Swinging at hitters' pitches and taking pitchers' pitches and pitches outside of the strike zone with less than 2 strikes, that correlates a heck of a lot stronger to a high strikeout percentage for hitters. And then when you get to 2 strikes, swing at pitches within the strike zone and on the fringes, and couple that with swinging as hard as the pitch dictates. There are so many runs to be had on mistakes that pitchers make with 2 strikes. Again, you don't get those all the time. You're not going to get the cookie every every time with 0-2, 1-2 count, 2-2 counts, but there are a lot of them. And definitely the lower the level, you get a ton of them. So if you were telling your hitters to go up, defend, protect, fight off, battle, no. What if they get a cookie, and they will? 1 out of 3 is probably going to be 1 out of 3 2-strike pitches is probably a cookie at the youth level. There's a double waiting to happen right there. But if you're up there just trying to foul it off or just put it in play, there's a much lower chance you're going to produce runs versus getting out. Now, Manny Machado, I saw him blasting Fernando Tatis. Did some of you guys see this? The other day, he was hooting and hollering at Fernando Tatis. I like Fernando Tatis. I don't know these guys personally, and I don't study them super close. I'd be foolish to sit here and vouch for any of them personally. But from what I see, I like Tatis, and I saw Machado blasting him in the dugout, yelling at him, and they got the mic on him. And one of the comments he said was, "It's not all about you." Manny Machado said, "It's not all about you" to Tatis. So I wonder if that's his way of telling, himself. Is that Manny talking to himself like, hey, it's not about you? Is that sometimes we verbalize things to other people, we're really talking to ourselves. It's kind of like a self-help thing. Sometimes we share advice, and really what we're doing is trying to talk ourselves into that advice. But maybe it was just him covering for his massive selfish flaw. I don't know, but it was interesting. I liked it. I don't know how real and genuine it was, but I liked it. I liked that. I thought he could have been a little more low-key about it. I think if you get players that can be a little more low-key, in the major leagues, they have clubhouses, so that's a little bit different. In youth baseball, you don't have clubhouses. But if you could have, if you talk to your players that they have a gripe or they have a complaint about one of their teammates, they get in their ear, but don't be rude, don't be disrespectful, but keep it low key. You can use this with your players. It works phenomenally with players. It's phenomenal strategy with players. When you want to blow up a player, trust me, you yell across the field, not going to have much influence. It's going to make you look like this, whatever, you're putting on a show, but that's not the point. The point is not to yell. The point is to get change. The point is to have the player change and improve, and then get the player to go more in a direction in which you like. But yelling at them, blasting them, that's not going to get them, the player, to where you want, as much as getting them to the side, maybe even waiting a few minutes so they're kind of off on the side. I'm going to drill, and you get next to them and you say, hey, and you're firm with them, like, hey, this isn't going to fly. It's going to be dependent on the player. It's going to be dependent on the relationship you have. It's going to be dependent on the situation, the error, the mistake that was made, or the lack of hustle. But you're going to be firm with your message, but you make it so only they can hear it. You make it so they know they're not getting blasted. They're going to save face, and they know that you're doing that. Trust me, this is gold, because it gets the change. It respects the player, but it also doesn't make, you're not a pushover. Actually, it shows a lot of maturity to your players, that you can wait to yell, or at least be firm. You can wait to get a little bit more firm and raise your tone of voice when you don't do it right away. You wait a little bit, and you can get them off to the side, and you show respect. You get them, maybe they're out in the outfield or whatever. Maybe they're chasing the ball over by the fence. You get them, hey, Chuck, come here, Chuck, let's talk. And then you get them, and then you make sure that you're not staring them right in the eye. This is the strategy I shared with you about talking with umpires. You can give the umpires an earful. Just don't make sure that earful is not loud enough for the fans to hear, or at least that the umpire thinks that the fans can hear. And make sure you're not staring them right in the eye. I know it's really, I don't like when people don't look me in the eye when they're talking. I don't like that. In fact, some people that don't make eye contact, I'm a little shaky on. They don't get my trust that fast or at all. I don't like that. Now, everybody's a little different, so it depends on the situation and the person, but I'm a big eye contact fan, and I get kind of ticked when if people aren't looking at me when I'm talking to them. I actually just have, a lot of you are my age, and you know what I'm talking about. I get to 40 years old. People aren't looking at me when I'm talking to them. I just stop talking. I just move on and do something else. I know that sounds kind of whatever, but some of you younger coaches, some of you younger people, maybe it's like, hey, what? Well, now as a coach talking to a player, that is something that you don't necessarily want to, you don't want to walk away from a player, but that's neither here nor there. That's kind of an example of where I'm at I wanted to give you some context where I'm at with eye contact. But even then, even as much as I'm such a huge believer in eye contact when people are talking, I'm a huge believer in not mad dogging your players, getting up in their grill, getting in their face when you got to get your point across. I'm not saying you can't make eye contact, but I would just turn a little bit, aim a little bit the other way with your face, and then let them have it. Just say, hey, this isn't going to fly. It happens again. You're not playing next week, or this is unacceptable, super disrespectful. You can up your tone of voice. You never want to say anything rude or disrespectful to a kid ever, but you can up your voice and you can let them have it a little bit. Now, the main reason I'm telling you to turn away in this particular instance is because there are other people around. There are other people watching. The teammates, the peers of your player are watching, or at least the perception is they might be watching. And if you don't save face for your player, you won't change your player because they're going to have such a hard time seeing through that resentment they have for you. Now, if this is a closed door meeting, yeah, you can stare them right in the eye and let them have it. But most of the time you're interacting with players, there's other players around. And as for the tone of your voice, you don't scream it so all the other players can hear. So Manny Machado blasting, got on camera. It's not all about you. I don't know. I think that's something I like to take things that we see out there, things that are happening, current events in the baseball community. And now it's hard for me to pick a youth game over in Minnesota and then dissect it and use it as an analogy or a metaphor, or just bring it into as an example or an illustration or kind of highlighting a point, because you're going to be like, well, Coach Bo, I don't live in Minnesota. I don't know that team. I don't know them from Adam. And I try to pick things that you can actually see on YouTube, and that typically is Major League Baseball, college baseball. And then I try to share what we can learn from it. So once you hear this, you can go listen to that, or you can go just pull it up on YouTube in a second. Manny Machado yelling at Tatis. You could probably put Machado Tatis and that would get you to the video. So he's a little over the top, but I do like that players are kind of self-managing each other. But I do think this is something that you have to help instruct players to do a little bit. Give them a little bit of a template. Like, you can get on your teammate, you can motivate your teammate, you can even holler a little bit at your teammates, but it's got to be within these parameters. All right, it's got to be something that is as low key as possible. Try not to be yelling and screaming. Doesn't mean they can't be firm. And if they need to, they can bring it up with the team as a group, and there can be some, I don't know, kind of not kangaroo court, but more of a kind of a, hey, here's the jury of your peers, and here's what we think about X, Y, or Z, because typically it's not just one player that sees it. So getting it from multiple angles. Now that could backfire. You could have a player that just doesn't want to take. He's coming. You got the whole team coming at him. That's not always a good thing. Now Tatis, I think that would be fine with. He's very confident, so it would work with him, and it might work with some of your players. But it's a case by case basis. But I wanted to bring that up. Also, speaking of major leaguers, Garrit Cole. So I told you a couple weeks ago I went to spend basically the weekend with my best friend, but then a whole day with all the guys that I grew up playing baseball and sports with and grew up going to school with from grade school. And we all get together. There's about 15 of us. We all get together at least once a year. And I flew down to Orange County. We do it over in Yorba Linda, and we get together. And man, it's a pretty good deal. It's a lot of fun. And one of my friends there, I was talking to him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I was talking to Garrit." I'm like, "Garrit, like our other friend?" Because we have a good friend in the group, Garrit. I'm like, "Oh, Garrit over there." He's like, no, I was hanging out with Garrit Cole the other night. And I'm like, oh, he was just here in Anaheim pitching. He goes, I'm like, you mean you hung out with him the night he threw a 7-inning, 15 strikeout, no walk game? And he goes, yeah, I was hanging out with him, and he had met him through some other people, but I guess they're friends now. And long story short, he said that Garrit was talking to him after, and I said, well, man, he dominated Shohei. I call him Shotani. He was dominating Shotani. Dominated him all night. I think he struck him out like 3 times. I don't know, but I think he struck him out all 3 at bats, and he was pitching him away. And he said, yeah, he goes, he had a simple game plan for Shotani, and what can we learn from this? Okay, Shohei Ohtani, Shotani as I call him. He knew that you can have a complex game plan. You can have this in-depth game plan, or you can really just hammer the one thing that's going to take care of 90% of that hitter. It's kind of the 80-20 rule. It's like, what's the 1 out of 5 things that's going to take care of 80% of your results? And if you go back and watch that highlights of the game, Garrit Cole pitching against the Angels a couple weeks back, he struck out 15, walked 0, and I think he gave up like 1 hit. Like dominant performance. And he had just a simple game plan for Shohei. And I thought that was something that was interesting, because sometimes you get a game plan, or when you're scouting a team or you're scouting an opponent or somebody in your league, sometimes just having one thing, like 1 or 2 bullet points for each opposing hitter in terms of attacking them or going after a weakness. Just one thing, the major thing that you can't do. Like if you go watch the film, you'll see exactly what he did. I'm going to have you go watch it. You can tell me exactly what Garrit Cole did to Shohei Ohtani, and it's very obvious. And so he shared that with my friend Mike. He said, we're going to do X. And that might take a little different form, but no matter what, we're going to stick with game plan X. And they did. And Garrit racked up some pretty nice Ks against him. So something to learn from. I think in youth baseball, if there's an opposing team that you want to scout, or you get a chance to scout, and you definitely will get a chance, maybe just write don't throw this, stay here with the pitch, this location, don't throw this or stay with this or what have you. Don't get too crazy with your game plans in youth baseball. Just find the one thing that's going to make the biggest difference with every opposing hitter and just follow that. Now, if you got to pivot, you can pivot because your data and your scouting reports aren't going to be like the major league teams, of course, nowhere even close. That was something else I thought we could learn from. If they're keeping the game plan simple, and those are the greatest players. Garrit Cole is one of the best pitchers on the planet. Shohei Ohtani is one of the best hitters, one of the best players, if not the best overall all-around player. I mean, who the heck pitches that way and hits home runs and is that fast? I mean, geez, his best attribute might not even be his power or his fastball. It might not even be his home runs or his fastball. It might be his speed. He's just amazingly fast. So just a really good athlete. So if there's a strategy for him that's as simple as the one Garrit Cole had in that game and was as successful, yeah, it doesn't hurt to throw 100. But again, the guys in your youth league, your pony, your little league, and your travel ball, your 12Us, your 7Us, your 14Us, those guys aren't going to be hitting like Shohei Ohtani. They're not going to be like Shohtani. So it's more apples to apples for the most part. So if it works for Garrit Cole, it's going to work for your pitchers, and that is keeping a game plan simple when attacking hitters. All right, I posted on Twitter a video of, I think it was the Dodgers, and it was first and third, one out. First and third, one out, and they did a sacrifice bunt to the first baseman. It's called a safety squeeze. It's a sacrifice safety squeeze. The difference between that and a suicide squeeze, like many of you know already, is that a hitter doesn't automatically bunt. And the runner at third is making sure that the bunt gets down on the ground. Make sure first that the bunter bunts the ball, because if he misses it, well, then you're toast if you're already going home, or likely going to be toast, or at least in a rundown. It's not going to probably turn out very good for the runner. So the runner at first, going to second, he waits till the ball's down too. So it does three things. And I'm not a big sacrifice bunt fan. In fact, I wouldn't even recommend doing it that much at all, except I'm a huge bunt fan. I'm a huge drag bunt fan. I love the drag bunt. For youth baseball, I love it for almost all the levels. I love the drag bunt. If that third baseman is playing back, or if that third baseman is shifted, or if that pitcher's not getting off the mound very good, I'm a huge drag bunt fan. I'm In fact, I'm on record on this podcast saying for youth baseball, I would stipulate to my offense, everybody in that offense, that if the third baseman is this deep and you could stand out there right by the bag or a couple of steps behind the bag, or maybe that third baseman is playing back all the way like you would say with 2 strikes, where he should be not playing until there's 2 strikes, but he's moved back or he's not paying attention, I would have it as an automatic drag bunt. Automatic. It would be automatic unless I, the coach, took it off. And you'd have a simple sign for that where you take it off because maybe you didn't want it at that time, but it would be default. That third baseman's playing deep, automatic drag bunt. The one sacrifice bunt that I really like is the safety squeeze, the one I described just a second ago, first and third, one out. Why? Because one, it's a safety squeeze. So if the batter misses the pitch, or it's a pitch in the dirt, or it's a pitch out, or whatever, or they do some, high leg kick pickoff, the runner at third is not going to be out because of that. They're not going to be hung out to dry. The runner at third is only going home if the ball is bunted down on the ground. So you don't risk that. So there's very low risk on that part. And then the bunt gets down, and almost always that runner is going to score if they're just somewhat responsive and have somewhat of a quick reaction to the bunt being down. They're almost always going to score. You bunt it to first base side. You bunt it to the first base side because now the catcher would have to catch the ball coming typically from the first baseman, maybe from the pitcher, and then he has to swivel all the way around and make that. He has to pivot all the way around and make that tag on the backside, and that takes a little bit of time. I know it's split. It's a matter of hundredths of a second, but that makes a difference when you're talking about just a few seconds to get down the line for that runner. It also helps to avoid hitting into a double play, an ending double play. See, that's why I like it with one out. With no outs, I wouldn't be so quick to do that. Now, let me back up. If you can steal second base, and just steal second base, but I like the idea of being able to get a run in and move the runner to second while avoiding the double play. So now you get a run in, you avoid a double play, and you move that back runner, the trail runner, the runner that was at first, you moved him or her into scoring position. So you got a run in, you avoid the double play, and you move the runner into scoring position. I really like that. I like that. I think giving up an out for a run, that's big. Giving up an out for one base, there's a reason the numbers show that sacrifice bunting does not help increase the run production at the major league level. They've back tested this with sample sizes that would blow your mind. You're talking millions of incidents or times that they've analyzed this, and they've shown clearly that sacrifice bunting does not help produce more runs than it takes away, because you're giving up an out for a base. And the simple math is 90 feet, when you need 4 bases to get a run, going up one base for an out, outs are more precious than one base. And the math just dictates and shows that, and it is what it is. It's not, you can't argue with the math. That's one thing I like about math. You can't argue with it. That math doesn't care about that. So at the youth level, definitely not the same thing, because at the youth level, the third basemen and pitchers are much more likely to throw the ball away. So a sacrifice bunt could very well turn into a double or a triple. So it's not the same thing. It's definitely not apples to apples. It's more like apples to pears. It's still fruit. It's just something that there's definitely a nuance there. So I just would rather have I would drag bunt. I would have my players drag bunt every time you wanted a sacrifice bunt, even if the third baseman is playing up. And then you have the sack bunt, the safety squeeze sack bunt. That's the one that they're just bunting towards first base. So I would make that a default setting for your offense, for your batters. First and third, one out. First and third, one out. They are required to safety squeeze. The offense is going to execute a safety squeeze unless you take it off. And you can take it off. Have a sign to take it off. All right. Have a simple sign that takes that off, and then just they hit. I'm a big fan in having default settings and then taking it off, because at least you're playing the percentages. You're playing the best percentage out of default, but then you change it or you take it off depending on the situation, because you see something different. There's something that's a little bit different there. It's kind of like the World Series last year. Blake Snell dominating. Well, I know the numbers say he should probably come out and not pitch this part of the game later in the game, but I don't know if anybody saw it any different than I did, because it's pretty hard not to see. He was dominating. He was on another level. His attitude, something about that moment, something about being out there in the World Series had him locked in. So now the numbers of the past, those are past numbers. And this is a big thing that's interesting that a lot of people don't quite know, is that Moneyball is based off of regression to the mean. It's based off of regression to the mean and also valuing certain statistics like on base percentage more than, say, batting average. But a lot of it is regress to the mean. So if a hitter has a bad year, they might get a cheap free agent at him because they believe he's going to regress to the mean in a positive way, or vice versa. They may think that somebody had a year, a really good year, is going to regress, or a couple of good years is going to regress to the mean, and thus don't pay him more than you have to. So anyways, I'm a big fan of having a default setting. Like defenses, I would have a default setting for every single position on your defense for a lefty, and then I would have a default setting, a default position for every single player on your defense for a right-handed hitter. And then I would adjust it depending on the hitter. But I would adjust it on a case-by-case basis. But at least you're giving them something, a baseline to start from that is at worst still the best option for all of the hitters if you were just taking the average hitter in your league, the average opponent, and then you adjust from there. But I love having a default setting for that. I love having a default setting for pretty much everything, and then adjusting. If you got to adjust, you adjust. If you got to take it off and move it, take it off and move it for sure. All right, last thing I want to hit on. We're going to try to keep this one under 30 minutes this week, because those episodes with the interviews went a little bit longer, but when the information is coming out like it was, it's hard to turn that off. Speaking of regressing to the mean, it's like having a dealer, you're in Vegas and the dealer's just throwing out 20s and 21s and 19s to everybody at the table, and everybody's just taking the casino to the cleaners. You know, you can't walk away. It's just hard to walk away from that, right? It's really hard to walk away, right? So you're going to regress to the mean, you're going to lose all your money, you're going to end up back at zero, you're going to end up with an empty tray, an empty stack, your stack is going to dwindle away, but it's really hard to walk away when the stack in front of you is building up. And that was the same thing. Last week, it was like, wow, these interviews are going good. I had them slated for about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. They ran long because it was like, wow, these two guys are just bringing it, Coach Murray and Coach Murphy, and they were dialed in with just, I thought, really good stuff, and there was no reason to shut it down. So nonetheless, I'm going to try to keep this one under 30, and we're getting up on that right now. Sports, techie, I get an article sent to me pretty much every day or every couple days from Sport Techie, I should say. It's a technology sports article that I read. It's one of the many that I get and read through. And Win Reality, a virtual reality training product for baseball and softball hitters, they announced a $3.75 million debt raise. And I'm not familiar with debt raise. I'm sure some of you know exactly what that. I'm guessing that was the funding round. They got 3.75 in funding. Usually it's like a Series A funding or Series B or Series whatever E funding. Anyways, 3.75 debt raise. More than 20 organizations, MLB organizations, and 100 college baseball and softball programs use Win Reality. It's virtual reality that runs with the Oculus Quest. It also uses pitch tracking data. I was telling you guys, I don't know, about a year ago, I said, man, this is the gold. This is going to be the gold standard for batting practice. It will be. And it will be ubiquitous through the youth baseball world very soon. I don't think it's there yet at the youth level. It's definitely costly still. But once they bring that price point down and they bring the effectiveness and the, I guess, the usability for youth baseball players and just the way that youth baseball players could probably use it to their advantage, that's not too far away. Something to keep an eye on, especially if you have like a 7, 8, or 9-year-old player, because this is something I would keep an eye on. This is definitely something. I know there's options and you can go do it now, but I think they're just scratching the surface. I read that article and I thought I'd share it with you. Just something to keep an eye on as we move forward, because that's definitely somewhere you want to get to. If you have virtual reality hitting in your area, I'd go do that, or at least check it out and get a taste of it and see how it is and see if it's not something you can start using down the road or in the near future with your team. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your health. Take this information out there. Take this information out there and help your team, help your players just have more success in all the different areas. Take care of your families, and we'll see you back here next Tuesday. Adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.